episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. It is the podcast that brings you the very best guests in true crime, covering trending cases like Justice for Dan Markel that has been trending for the better part of more than a decade. Still one of the more well-known and publicized true crime cases in the United States of America. And last week you saw Donna Adelson in court. She is the matriarch accused in the orchestration of a murder-for-hire plot against FSU law professor Dan Markel. Dan, born in Montreal, grew up in Toronto, went to two schools you may have heard of, Harvard College and Harvard Law School, graduated at the top of his class from both. He was an outstanding attorney and then a legal scholar on his way as high as one could go when his life was cut short back on July 18th, 2014. Well, Donna Adelson was in court last week saying she didn't like jail, that it's tough. She doesn't sleep well. The mattress is thin. She wanted out. And also, she wanted a call with her son, Charlie, who's convicted now of the same charges in the same crime as, a co-conspirator. A call she had with Charlie that was hung up by him. She goes on to say that she's either going to self-unalive herself and or take a one-way trip to Vietnam, showing some consciousness of guilt. And guess what? That call is now coming in, as are our best guests. Special welcome to R. Timothy Jansen, famed Tallahassee defense attorney. And he is also a former federal prosecutor. Today, a very special day because Tim's older daughter, Janie, is now engaged. Tim, as the father of two young girls, way too young to be engaged, how does it feel?
It feels wonderful. You know, you raise your daughter and hope she finds the man of her dreams and someone that we love. And I think she's found him. We're ecstatic and she's happy, and it's all good in the Jansen household.
I love it. What's his first name, if I may have it?
His name is Austin.
Austin. Oh boy, it comes full circle because Wendy's in Austin, Texas. But let's move.
Don't combine the two.
Next up, we got the Professor Joe Patudo, Professor Emerita, University of Nebraska. She's taught everywhere, and she's coming to us, I think I can say this, live from Italy tonight. So she does not mess around. It's like 1 a.m. But Joe Patudo is a night owl, and of course, one of my favorites and a fan favorite, G-Money, Gigi McKelvey, host of Pretty Lies and Alibis. You see her on that show. You see her on our second channel because the COE had her on today. And you see her on Law and Crime. You see her on News Nation. You see her everywhere you see true crime. So, Gigi, I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. But Tim Jansen, bond denied. No bond. Typically, on a first-degree murder charge, there is not even a bond. How did this become a request to begin with? How often do you see first-degree murder defendants even asking for bond?
Well, you can ask for bond, and then you have to have what's called an Arthur hearing in Florida. This motion was not taken in good faith. The basis for which they were asking for bond were ludicrous. And then the judge went through the steps, let them put their record on. And as we said before, the consciousness of guilt of traveling or trying to commit suicide is the second prong of Arthur. Once they reach the prong that the presumption of evidence is great, then the court decides whether they want to do the discretion of making sure that person will show up. Well, she was going to kill herself, and then she was going to flee to a foreign country. She had zero chance of getting a bond. And even the judge will tell you in his order, he didn't find her testimony credible. So you can guarantee that in her trial, there will be a jury instruction that says consciousness of guilt, flight to avoid prosecution, which is going to be devastating.
Tim, where does that come up in the trial? I obviously Everitt is going to read that, but when do we hear that?
That will be read in the jury instructions. And when the parties finally get to the jury instructions, it'll be put in there and then they can talk about it in their closings. I think that Sarah or Georgia can talk about it in their opening because they have a good faith basis that this evidence is coming in, that she tried to flee to avoid prosecution. And you can say, and the court's going to give you an instruction that that's a consciousness of guilt.
By the way, my week started off with Tim Jansen. We both were on Nancy Grace's show. We didn't even know that we were both going to be on until we saw each other there. And she's covering this very topic. Tim, do you know when that airs by any chance?
No idea. I had to make a quick exit. I had to go to court.
I have no idea when it airs, but
it's usually like at 11:30 at night on some unknown channel.
It's always an experience, and this one was no different. It's fun. It's fun to be on Nancy's show. Let's put it that way. But one of the things she was talking about that, Nancy is a huge victims advocate, and Gigi knows this, the professor knows this. Whenever we're talking true crime, a lot of times the victims themselves get lost in all the discussion of court dealings. But this is Dan Markel. Again, he was literally just getting started in life. The kids, Benjamin and Lincoln, and of course, Ruth on the right, and Phil, who I've come close with both. And they, it's agonizing for them every single time Donna appears in court. And now there's more news that has come out, which is why we are reconvening. Tim, before I get to Joe and Gigi, just coming back to you on this, because you might know here, even though we don't have had some former inmates the last bunch of times, but Jersey Girl, one of the better names, being I'm from Jersey, would Donna be put on a self-unaliving watch now after this decision? Tim, how do you, in this situation, how do they go about informing Donna? I'm assuming she hears from her attorneys. Do you have to just be blunt with your clients? And this question here, are they going to take precaution with her now that she's stuck in jail?
Well, if the jail is smart, they'll put her in a watch for 24, maybe 48 hours, just to make sure after this decision, which I hope that her lawyers weren't telling her they thought they had a good chance of getting out, because that would have just been foolish. And you never want to pump your clients up for disappointment. You'd rather have them telling you have a long shot, and if you get it, it's even better. But to tell them that you're going to get it and you don't get it, it's going to be really devastating. She had to know that she wasn't getting bond. And they attached these two motions back to back, right? The motion to suppress and the bond. And the motion to suppress talked all about her fleeing the jurisdiction. So the judge had that information right in front of him and then you had to use that to the bond motion. So it wasn't very timely to put them together like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they're watching her, and I'm sure she did not take the news well. And then you see this comment, Wendi, and welcome to BRMC. Love seeing new names. Love having new people here. Wendi was the worst actress ever, like her mother. No Oscars for them. That is definitely true. Out of those three, I would say Charlie was by far the smoothest, but a little too smooth. Joe, you're now on a different continent, far away from the madness that is the Dan Markel murder case and Donna Adelson. You watched, I know, closely last week when Donna spoke in court. She did, I believe, sort of overact, over-animated. And then the hammer drops this week. Both things she asked for, denied. Any surprise to you that Judge Everitt said thanks, but no thanks?
No. If there was any surprise at all, and I'm not even sure I'd call it a surprise, I thought his analysis, particularly in the motion to suppress, was just great. Just great.
You're talking about Everitt's analysis? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Do me a favor. We're the COE's pulling up some little excerpts from the rulings, and we'll have those in a moment. But in what stood out to you, Joe Petito?
Well, particularly in the motion to suppress, he went through the law in such a close and precise and accurate way that, were they to appeal this, and I don't, well, were they to, and when they to, I don't think he gave them any room at all. The only place in the motion to suppress where I might have done it differently was when he got to saying it was up to Donna and her lawyers to show why there was a violation. He might then have said, even if it was up to the state to show it, the answer would have been the same. And then he would have closed every little hole, but it was just a wonderful job.
And I'm going to circle back because I'm always interested in like kind of the inside baseball and the little things like how a judge writes a ruling, which I have no idea about other than reading them and saying, wow, it sounds very legalese. So I'm going to circle back on that. Love your show earlier, COE. The COE, if you guys don't know, we have launched a second channel, True Crime Talk, and Gigi McKelvey of Pretty Lies and Alibis was on with the COE, as well as Lori Vallow's cousin, Megan Connor. And they were talking because this Friday, let me promote it because they don't get enough promotion, on Dateline with Keith Morrison. You may have heard of Keith Morrison. It's my Keith Morrison candle right there, right next to the screen by Edvard Munch. That's my Keith Morrison candle. And I'm actually sitting on his pillow right now to raise me higher. I have a Keith Morrison pillow. But this Friday on Dateline, Keith Morrison is interviewing Lori Vallow, and they talked all about it on the show today. And one of the COE's good friends who she worked with, Kelsey at News Nation, is hosting her own show tomorrow on the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively, and that's about all I know. There you go. Literally can't even believe I got their names right, but I did. And she's doing a whole breakdown. She used to actually work in Hollywood and knows Blake Lively a little bit and has some really interesting insight. So if you're interested in that case on the second channel, the COE will put the link in. Gigi McKelvey, it's been too long, G Money. I know you're covering as many cases as I am, which is tough to do, tough to keep up with. But this Donna Adelson case, how she appeared in court last week, whining and complaining about jail mattresses being too thin, along with her ear canals and needing to flush out earwax. We're going to be in for an interesting trial. From like a media perspective, what did you make of her performative, testimony on the stand there, and what do you think it portends for the trial?
The biggest thing I took out of that whole hearing was that little hint that her attorneys dropped, that they needed to prepare her to take the stand, or it was something along those lines. So I thought, okay, maybe that's a hint of what's to come. I'm here for it, Joel. I mean, look, I understand Donna's in her mid-70s, which today is still relatively young. I have a very healthy 90-year-old grandmother in the next room, but I understand at her age, things do hurt, and your young life catches up with you. But at the same time, look, Dan Markel's dead. He's buried. And if you don't want to go to jail, don't kill dads that just want to be in their kids' lives, or allegedly, because she hasn't been convicted yet. But man, I'm ready to see her on the stand, because I think Donna is going to, I really think it's possible. Does she kind of just throw this all on Charlie and say, look, he might have been getting extorted, but he paid Katie? I mean, she said there was a filing or something where that was sort of touched on, that Charlie was the one that paid Katie. Just curious to see which direction she goes, because, really her life's on the line. If she's convicted, that's it. We all know that. But I just kind of have a feeling she's going to, kick the can to Charlie.
That's interesting. And not Wendi. I'm thinking,
no.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because across the board, most people say she's not going to touch Wendi, but I'm not so sure about that after hearing those jailhouse calls. And now she's been marinating in jail and hating every minute of it.
And then again, too, you think about it on the flip side. I mean, Charlie sort of threw mom under the bus the day her trial was going to start by not waiving that conflict of interest. I mean, at this point, just like Donna, Charlie now doesn't have the uncertainty of whether or not he's going to spend life in prison. I mean, he thought he was going to hitch a ride with Dan back to South Florida after verdict. But, I think maybe just sitting in there for a little while, getting mad, who knows? I just think it's a wild card with the both of them right now.
Yeah, it sure is. And things are going to unravel quickly, I think. Arlene, Sari, thank you so much. I'm sure it's Sari. Love these great guests. What great news about Donna being denied. Thank you so much. These go a long way. COE quickly took this down, but I'm putting it back up. Stop talking, Joel. Let the guests talk. Welcome to my life in a nutshell. I get about 50 of these a day. Unfortunately, I host a show, which is hard to do without talking. I would love to see how there's duct tape over my mother's mouth. I would love to duct tape myself and just let the guests talk. I'm going to try that, actually. Tim Jansen, you do all the talking, not me. Not bitter at all about that comment. Not ready to snap after spending. I told Gigi I was on the phone for 3 hours with SunPass here in Florida, and it's no way to start a show after having done that. So anyway, I digress, and now I'll get hate mail for that. Tim, how does the court weigh allegations of, mistreatment in jail? I mean, Judge Everitt, at least on the face of it, has to take it seriously, and we'll go through and break down some of the complaints. But the complaints, some of them literally where the mattress was too thin and I need to drain the wax out of my ears. I'm sure Judge Everitt behind closed doors had to have chuckled a little bit, but he's got to take it seriously. So how do they weigh this?
Well, this is not the Ritz-Carlton. You can expect it's going to be uncomfortable. Yes, you're going to get carbs, you're going to get spaghetti, you're going to get potatoes, and you're going to get bread. So he doesn't even consider that information. Now, she's not getting fed. That's another thing. All of the things she complained about were nothing of a serious nature that was life-threatening in any way. She asked for medical. She got medical. She even on her own testimony said they did respond to her. She saw a nurse like once or twice a day. And just because she didn't get the gold standard that she was used to doesn't mean it's violation of the Constitution. I think the state brought in prison officials to testify about how often she went to the nurse or got medical. Nothing stands out. It wasn't like she was rushed to the hospital, right? Or they had to give her life-saving techniques, a defibrillator or something like that. None of that occurred here. This was more just about it wasn't comfortable. She talked to her husband all the time. She's seeing her lawyer almost every Monday in person. So I don't care how small her ears are. She was able to hear her lawyer. She was able to hear the court questions, and she answered the question. I never heard her say once, "I'm sorry, I can't hear you." That would have been great. So obviously they didn't prep her properly.
Hey, Tim, can you do a Nancy Grace impression? How many times did Nancy...
Oh, you like she yelled at her staff?
Yeah, no, how many times...
With my papers? Why don't we have this? Who's doing this? Why are we here?
How many times did she say the words earwax? She's like,
oh
she
God.
wants out because
earwax.
of earwax. It was interesting.
And spaghetti and earwax is why she wanted out.
Yeah. Well, Joe Patuto, Donna says she put on 1/3 of her body weight in jail since she's been there because of the carbs. She's got to buy tuna. It's at the commissary. It's her only source of protein. And we'll get into that, which sounds insane, but we will. But before I get there, just back to so here's part of one of the rulings. COE's got it here now. So let's take a look at it. And then I want you as the law professor help us break this down. The evidence from Charles Adelson's trial, viewed in the light most favorable to the state, demonstrates the defendant's personal and unique motive to assist, this is denying bond, cause or encourage the murder of Dan Markel. 2, the lengths the defendant was willing to go in the custody battle involving her grandchildren. 3, testimony by Catherine Magbanua directly implicating the role of the defendant in the payment of the murder for hire. 4, payments made by the defendant to alleged co-conspirators following the murder. Text messages and cell tower analysis demonstrating defendant's movements on the night of the murder and defendant's conduct after the law enforcement bump operation and communications unauthorized wiretap interceptions. Now, during the actual hearing, I think we heard all of this except for number 6. But Joe Patuto, this is my question. How does Judge Everitt, who is juggling many cases, right? How do you write these rulings? I'm curious. Like, how does a judge know what to put in, what not to put in, and how to like legally put this all together? I mean, I know it's a silly question because he's a judge, but I'm curious.
Well, he knows what the standard is that has to be met in order for him to deny the release, the bond release. And that is the evidence has to be, the presumption has to be great. The evidence is sufficient, assuming the jury believes the state's case. So you start with that, and then you go through the evidence that the state had summarized. And he sat through Charlie's trial. So a lot of this he knew from firsthand, just from sitting from the other trial. And then he simply organizes the evidence the state had. He didn't put everything, but the evidence that the state has that would go to prove in front of the jury that she's guilty. He could have had some of this written before the hearing. There may well have been other motions. I think she made a bond motion earlier, so there may have been other places where he could have actually pulled language. I don't know. Most places a trial judge has a law clerk. Tim, is that true?
Yeah, they have several law clerks to help them.
Okay, so they can do some research and pull the cases for him to read. It's really, I don't think this one for him was all that difficult to do. This just laid out really, really, really quickly. And, you know, I agreed with Tim. I usually agree with Tim. But a lot of what, you know, I wouldn't have done this motion because it almost looks silly to be bringing this and setting it up. So, you know, now you've sort of set the stage for the judge of, you know, the level of which, you know, I don't want to say petty, but I will, and I did, you know, at which she's making the claims. It's not a good start to be doing this. The only thing I saw in that bond motion that I think would have given Judge Everitt pause, where I on the bench, it would have given me pause, and I actually did, you know, a couple of sessions of training judges how to write opinions, was the sort of the implied or implicit threat that they don't see her enough, so they're not going to be able to prepare her for trial, and she's not going to get effective assistance of counsel because they haven't had a chance to go through the evidence with her. That's the only one of everything was said, and they spent no time with it. They're off on all this other stuff that was never going to be enough to get her out. And the one thing that had some possibility of doing it, they threw in but didn't develop at all. So I think Joel, this was an easy. This motion almost wrote itself.
Yeah, before I get back to Gigi, Tim, I mean, to Joe's point, it was kind of a hollow motion, the bond motion, right? And it's denied summarily. Does that stuff kind of get under the skin of a judge? Like, do you have to be careful with the motions you're filing? Like, does it annoy him now that he's got to sit there and respond to it?
Well, the motion suppress had to be filed to protect the lawyers. Now, it wasn't going to win, but you have to file it.
Well, I'm talking about the bond.
Yeah, I know, but the motion for bond, the lawyers got to have a good faith basis for the motion. That motion looks like it was Donna wanting to get out. They filed it knowing they weren't going to get bond. They've kind of locked her in now at trial because anything she said on the stand at this hearing will be admissible against her if she changes her theory about her flight. So they've given the state a preview of what her defense is going to be. And I can tell you the state is already getting evidence to rebut it.
Gigi McKelvey, G Money, as I call her. What are the chances? I've seen this comment like 30 times now, and I kind of laugh it off, but people are saying she's going to show up to trial in a wheelchair. Now, John Singer, who's on the show, who's been in trial over and over, but he famously said that Donna is not going to make it very long. And I thought he was being silly because when you saw her during the arrest video, she was in great shape. I think she was 72 or 73 at the time. Now she's 75. But she has, you know, she's packed on the pounds. She said it herself. She's put on a third of her body weight. Are we going to see, besides the kosher starvation strike that was just up there. Do you think there's a legitimate chance we could see her in a wheelchair rolling into court?
I mean, I would not be surprised. Donna's going to have to try to get any ounce of sympathy she can from that jury. I think we're going to see Donna dressed like a little librarian, probably down in her seat, looking all vulnerable. And, they'll definitely use her age to any benefit that they can. But, one thing, Joel, is kind of going back to when she was on the stand. I thought it was interesting because after the nurse testified, they were talking about all the things that they had offered Donna for her various ailments. Every time, Tylenol won't work. I know the oral steroids won't work. And I'm thinking to myself, like, anybody who is super miserable in pain would try anything to get some relief. But every single treatment they recommended, oh, I know it doesn't work. Tylenol's not going to work for me. Yeah, we know. We heard you on Vicodin with some wine, and she could barely talk. Sounded like she was 3 sheets to the wind. I just thought that was one thing that stood out to me where, if you're hurting enough and you're in jail and you don't have access to narcotics or things you normally would do to ease the pain, I would have been like, I'll take the oral steroids any day. And then they said she was offered that injection. I would love to see them talk about that, if she takes the stand. Well, if you were so miserable, why didn't you do these things that they offered you just to see if it worked? Tiny ear canals kind of, I mean, that's a whole other issue. I don't know. You have to get you could get a little newborn bulb and get in there and flush it out. I've never heard somebody say, I need to get out of jail because my ear canals are very narrow.
Yeah, that goes down in history for sure.
I'm gonna put that on a shirt.
Yeah. Stephen Webster called them eerie canals, which I love. Eerie canal. That would be the shirt. # eerie canals. Leah Anna Davis. Can a guest, Tim Jansen, talk about what the prosecution gleaned from Donna's testimony in the hearing and how it might be used at trial? Look, you're getting a nod from the professor on that. Tim, they kind of had to show their hand a little bit. What do you learn if you don't already know, if you're Georgia and Sarah Dugan? Georgia wasn't even in court that day. I'm sure she goes, oh, thank you, Debbie. I love to hear Joel talk. I'm going to try to host a show without talking, without saying one word. I'm going to figure out how to do it. But Tim, go ahead.
Well, Georgia, I saw Georgia that day. She was in a trial. That's why she wasn't in that hearing. They gleaned on what her defense is going to be about the flight and why she went to get peace. And they've already got many witnesses that are going to testify that Harvey didn't even buy the tickets. They had a third party buy the tickets surreptitiously so they wouldn't be uncovered, not for this pain vacation, but because they were fleeing. And now she's locked herself into that story. And now she's stuck with that story. And they are working on witnesses now that will undercut that story. And it's not going to go well for her. I think Jackie was probably trying to figure out what kind of witness she will be. And I don't think she'll be a good one. But, she's delusional Donna, right? She thought she could get away with murder. And then she thought that Charlie was going to get free. That's why they didn't leave sooner. They thought he was coming home. If she was so smart, she would have left before the verdict so they wouldn't have been able to get her. So I don't know what she's thinking, but obviously that's why she's behind bars.
Yeah,
That was the silliest. I thought the explanation for the bump was silly. But I thought that explanation for why she had to go to a country where she couldn't be extradited was about as silly as anything I've heard in my life. You could go to, Aruba. You could go to, the French Riviera. It doesn't have to be somewhere. You can't be. I just thought that was an incredible explanation. And boy, I think that will hurt her in front of a jury. I mean, that's much worse than where she was before.
Yeah. I mean, Tim, before I get back to Gigi, once again, I keep saying that, but we asked you about the prosecution, but now is the defense going to learn from some of their mistakes as well, to not bring up things that might be too, I mean, the extradition explanation is laughably bad, that she wanted to make it easier to turn herself in.
Right.
So do they have to look at some of what Donna was saying and make sure that she doesn't repeat some of that stuff in front of a jury of her peers.
Well, their problem is now Donna's never going to win a trial without her getting on the stand and trying to explain things, right? Because she's going to come up with this conspiracy that Charlie came to her and said, and I love Charlie. But who's going to come in and say that? Charlie? Now I found out that the state, Georgia, has subpoenaed Charlie to the stand. That's why you're going to see he's going to be transported. But that doesn't mean he's going to be called. Now, if the defense calls him, he can say, I'm not testifying, because the defense can't give him immunity. So Charlie, as you saw right before her trial, his appellate lawyer talked him into saying, I'm not waiving anything. I got a chance on my appeal, and I got a chance on my ineffective counsel. So he's not going to cooperate with Donna. So Donna has to testify. And so all they've done is give the state a preview of her testimony, and it's not good. I don't see how they can proceed without her testifying.
Yeah, I would agree with that. By the way, G Money, are you going out to watch Lori Vallow defend herself? Are you going to go for that?
Yeah, I'm planning on it. My son turns 18 on April 4th, and I missed the last birthday because of Lori Vallow, so I'm not missing this one. So I'm hoping maybe around the 5th to head out there. Although I have heard, and this was something Megan said today, that jury selection, according to the state, could take weeks. Maybe not as long as they think, but I mean, probably given that length of time due to the fact that Lori is her own attorney, and they maybe anticipate she's not going to know what she's doing. But yeah, so I'm planning on going out at some point. It just seems really full circle with this podcast was really started on this case, and went to all of Lori's, got to Chad's the day the defense took over and his kids were on the stand. So got to go see some justice for Charles and hopefully back out for Brandon. So yeah, I'm going to go to Phoenix and maybe take a couple of my kids with me and see what happens.
Well, happy birthday to the 18-year-old.
Yeah, he's at an EMT competition in Charleston right now with his career school. So maybe driving down there for awards day Friday. I'm really 7 hours there and back, but that's my baby.
By the way, I'm addicted to the show The Pit on Max. I don't know why I give them free promos, but it has to do with the ER, and you said EMT. So there you go.
Mason loves that show.
I tennis girl, I was paying attention, but maybe not that closely. She's calling me out for you having said that earlier today. Where's this comment? Here we go. Harold, anything but dull. And he's very interested in this trial and told me he may show up and I'd love to meet him. In his order, the judge said that Donna was not credible, Tim Jansen. Isn't that just saying that Donna is a liar? That's really interesting. Her reason for going to a non-extradition country was laughable, but Harold's a very bright guy and he picks up on these things. Telling in a ruling saying you're not credible, is that the same as saying Donna is a liar?
It's a polite way. He could have said incredulous. You want to know how these judges know how they're going to write their opinion? They know what they're going to do, right? You pretend like you're going to fire an employee, right? So what are you going to put? You're going to put everything bad that employee did to justify why you fire him. So what he does, I'm going to deny the motion, and here are all the reasons why. And he's going to go down each and every reason and put it in there. And the appellate court will affirm it. I don't see anything that he did in these two orders that could be appealed successfully. Not at all.
Tim froze up for a split. So look at this. This is the first one for STS. Hi from Siem Reap, Cambodia. 7 a.m. here. Thanks to technology. It really is amazing what people could do. Donna's health will really tank now. Have you been to Cambodia, Joe Patuto, now that you're in Italy?
Nope, I have not. Italy is my place. And by the way, I can give you instruction on how to do a session without talking. We use our hands, and there are all kinds of lessons on what the hands mean. Yeah. So I'll be your tutor.
Hey, Edge of the Ledge, email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. I've often dreamt of just taking off, maybe like Donna. And Cambodia, I heard you can live for a very long time on very little money. So that would be good for me. And that person right now is like, Joel, shut up. I'm tired of listening to it. Joel, my name is Bella. I'm South African, but live in Qatar. I'm so in love with the show. Love your clever guest, Gigi. Man, I wish she said clever host, but she did guess. I'll take it. Gigi, Jopo, and thank you, Thembella. I love seeing new
Thank you,
people. And
Thembella.
look at this,
Yeah,
Cambodia
thanks.
and Qatar. I'm writing these down right now. Cambodia and Qatar. And then the other day we had Lesotho, Africa, and I'm not getting political, but last night in the State of the Union, the president mentioned Lesotho, and he said a country that no one has ever heard of. And I said I've heard of it because I've got a person that watches me from Lesotho and watches the show from Lesotho, Africa, which is a landlocked country surrounded by South Africa. Gigi, let me come back to you on this one. You're the media person, and you're the one who maybe most closely resembles a juror. But when these jurors hear that she got a one-way ticket, not a round trip, but a one-way ticket to Vietnam, is that game over, do you think? Or is it
I
going to
think
be
Yeah. I mean, and also with the visa thing, it was, do you want what 30 or 90 days? And she chose 90 and said, I'll extend it if I need to. There's so much consciousness of guilt here. I think once they really lay out this case from start to finish, and then we sort of pick up where Donna is, the hot mic calls coming in, they're going to hear that. I'm working on isolating those vocals a bit and kind of boosting the volume to where we can hear a little more clear what's said, but it's very damning stuff and you can't explain it away. I mean, in Donna's mind, maybe she thinks she can, but this was not a we need to breathe, we need peace trip. This was a holy crap. We know they're thinking something up there, like Rashbaum told them, and we got to go. So, yeah, I mean, I think her goose is cooked. It's just, I honestly wonder, is she suffering from Charlie delusional syndrome where in her mind, they're going to see this older lady who's a grandma, and I'm sure that is how they're going to portray her. Her defense is going to make her out to be, Mary Poppins, like mother of the year and everything else. But yeah, no, I just don't think she's going to be likable to this jury. And look, these prosecutors are girl bosses. They know what to do. They are playing a very strategic chess game. And when I was very new to this case, it was really during Charlie's trial that I even started learning what it was about. I didn't have to go far other than their openings for me to get a good picture of a very convoluted story. There's so many players, so many different things going on, but these prosecutors are amazing. I think they're just gonna, go what 1, 2, 3, 4 for 4 at this point. I mean, they got the plea deal, guilty for Sigfredo, double trial for Katie, got the guilty, and then Donna. And then my big question now at this point really is who's next? Who's going to be the next one, if anybody? I don't know about Wendi, but we will see.
Yeah. Tim, you always get the Wendi questions. By the way, it's Qatar, not Qatar. I'm going to defer to the professor. Professor, am I wrong? I think it is pronounced Qatar by many people. And most people think it's Qatar. Do you happen to know, Joe?
I'm going to take the 5th.
There you go. The 5th on that. I will look it up. Someone can ask Google. Joe Patuto, sort of the same. And then there's a lot more to get to because you're looking at pictures of Katie Magbanua, Sigfredo Garcia, and Charlie. And Charlie and Katie are, it was divulged that they are heading in their prison buses to Leon County for this trial. So we're going to talk about that. And also Sigfredo Garcia in 5 days is going to be deposed on March 10th. And look at this, Sadiq Farouk in Nigeria. This is wild and crazy, and I love the fact that we've got people here from all over the place. But just to piggyback on Gigi's comment about the one-way ticket, you know how I feel about the fact they could have afforded a round-trip ticket. Is that almost enough in and of itself when this evidence is laid out to have jurors say, that's it. She was trying to get away. She's part of this. It doesn't, is that going to bury her?
You mean in addition to the other evidence? I think so. I think so. I mean, the frenzy, the frenzy that they were in after Charlie's conviction to get away just belies the claim that all they wanted to do was go somewhere and be calm and be able to relax. I just think that a jury, I don't think she's going to be credible on the stand. I don't think she's going to be sympathetic on the stand. I don't think she's going to be able to keep her story straight from start to finish. I think she might be able to do it on direct. I don't think she's going to be able to do it on cross. I think whatever the evidence is now, her testimony will make it worse, not better.
Agreed. I agree. Imagine if she doesn't take the stand. That'd be a bummer, but I think there's what Tim said. There's no way really around it. But Tim, this is the ruling from Judge Stephen Everitt about the call coming in about wanting to take off to Vietnam. It says, for those who are listening, the evidence of flight is admissible as consciousness of guilt, while sufficient evidence exists to establish the defendant fled to avoid prosecution. One day after Charles Adelson was convicted of first-degree murder and other crimes, the defendant discussed fleeing to countries without extradition to the United States. See States Exhibits 4 and 5. That same day, defendant communicated with Vietnam Visa Indochina Sun Travel through what she believed was a secure communication application, WhatsApp, trying to acquire a fast-track emergency visa for Vietnam, and wanted it the fastest she can get it. You had direct quote, Tim, it's over. That's all you got to see here. Why else are you going to Vietnam for one? That's my Nancy Grace. Why else are you going to Vietnam for a one-way trip?
Well, I think I wrote about this in the Democrat the day afterwards, that was the ball game. I think you're going to find part of the reason there is evidence that she was going with no round trip ticket because she was going to stay away. Now, she was conflicted because one of her grandchildren had a birthday coming up, and they were going to wait for a month or two and see if they can come back for that grandchild's birthday. But they were going to wait and see if they were going to warrants reform. That's a lot different than her saying, I'm going away for this Siddhartha trip, whatever you want to call it, a theory of, being and feeling pain-free. It's just not credible. It was bad advice to tell her to leave. And just remember when she left, right? She left the day after Georgia had that press comment and said, stay tuned in the Capitol or in the courthouse. She said, stay tuned. And that's when you see the flurry of activity on the computer and trying to get the visas. Hey, Joel, we don't hear you.
You know what? The computer doesn't like me talking either because it just ran. I did not mute myself. It muted me.
I think your mom did that.
She did. You know what? She probably has a remote mute button on me. I wouldn't be surprised. Catherine Talbot, I was saying thank you for this, and the person right before whose name I am now blanking on, but I apologize. But I saw the other, Nan R. That's not who I was talking about, but I do know Jerry Michael. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. So. Gigi, to you, the whole issue with this call, it's like the so-called hot mic call. And by the way, Gigi's got to run, I think, in a minute. But the whole issue here was that Donna's defense and she were basically saying, even though every 20 seconds it says this is a recorded jailhouse call from Leon, blah, 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 that even though that plays every 20 or 30 seconds, that she did not realize the call was being recorded after she thought she hung up. You think that was like a valid argument to make, or anyone who's talking to anybody in jail should know at this point that these calls are recorded and can be used against them, and they usually are?
Yeah, I mean, I get calls from people that are incarcerated very regularly. You hear that message every time, no matter how many calls you get. They make it very clear they're recorded and subject to monitoring. If you don't want the call to be recorded, you can hang up. Or if you feel like it should be private, go through the steps. The thing is this, I mean, Donna didn't hang her phone up. That is not the state's fault. That's not the judge's fault. That would be Donna's fault. And I think that it's really good that Prosecutor Dugan came back and mentioned even Harvey knew this call wasn't hung up when he looked at the phone. So, it's one of those things where if she had hung up the phone, we might not be here right now, at least this quickly. I don't know. Maybe they were going to get her anyway, but I'm sure there was a sense of urgency because she was taking a one-way trip to Vietnam. I think that it's fair game. And I think that the state had some good examples in their filing and in their arguments where they talk about these accidental phone calls that were allowed to be brought in criminal trials. So, Donna, I mean, look, I've done it too. One time I didn't hang up a call and literally talk smack about somebody for 2 minutes after I thought I hung up. And it was all on their answering machine. And it was such a huge lesson for me, but it's not a good feeling when you realize you haven't hung up the phone and you were saying things you maybe didn't want other people to hear. But too bad. I mean, the thing is, a lot, you had the FBI doing the bump. They're watching them. I can't imagine Prosecutor Kappelman and Dugan when they heard this call. Can you imagine like them dancing around the prosecutor's office? And, they had to have just been like, this is gold. This is amazing.
So Gigi, you're right. I got word from some inside sources that they were shocked and that information was sent to them because remember now, they had a neighbor who they called about hotel, had called the state attorney's office, and they were reviewing that. And then they get this call at the jail. Now the FBI has got Sanford running down to the Miami airport as before. I mean, he was in transit before the judge even signed the warrant.
Wow.
So Jason Newland's on the phone with the judge, and and Pat Sanford was driving down there to be at the terminal right when she was getting on. And if you look at the time it was signed and the time she was arrested, it's like 2 hours.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, he signed it like at 5:30 and she got caught at 8 o'clock getting on the plane.
Oh, wow.
That is nuts. By the way, that voicemail that Gigi left was on my voicemail. She was talking about how horrible a host I am, and she doesn't like hearing me talk. G Money, I know I got to let you go at some point. We don't want you to, but whenever you have to go, is it now?
I can probably stay another 5. I'm doing a live with my Patreon members. We do a weekly live. So I didn't get to do it yesterday. So I'm going to hop over there. I'll stay 5 more minutes. I'm good.
All right. Whenever you
my
have to
dad,
go,
by the way, he thought I was on with Patreon, and they all know and love my parents. And he was trying to sneak up behind me. I was like, Dad, no, I'm not on Patreon. He was just going to bust in. Jazz hands.
I love your dad. He can come on anytime.
He's the best.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Dads are the best, aren't they?
Oh my gosh. My parents are rock stars. I love them so much. I've had like the best life because of my parents.
Gigi travels everywhere with her familia. I love it.
That's my posse right there.
Dr. Reinhardt here. To you, Tim, this is sounds like Donna at her hearing. This is going to make Tim's ears perk up with joy. Accomplished nothing except making her lawyers richer. Am I wrong? Was anything substantive accomplished there?
No. And if they're getting paid by the hour, the answer is yes. I don't know if these lawyers are billing by the hour. They might be. But I think Donna we know she's got a lot of money, but she's been going through a lot of money. And I think after the last time where she did a fee, she probably, because Alec got paid a flat fee and prepared and he's out, right? So sometimes clients then change how they want to get paid. They want a flat fee or they want hourly. It'd be nice to know if it's hourly, because then filing motions like this, you can at least say, okay, now I can see why they filed it. But the motion to suppress should have been filed. I don't have any problem with that motion at all. The motion for bond, I think they knew they weren't going to get bond, and they subject her to cross-examination on a key issue that's going to crucify her at trial. They gave the state pre-notice of what she's going to say. That's really bad. So I think they took 1 step forward and 9 steps backwards, the defense.
By the way, if you appreciate the content, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. We're on Patreon. As you heard, Gigi has her own Patreon, her own channel, Pretty Lies and Alibis. Subscribe there as well, 2 for 1. And tomorrow night, the Alexander brothers, they're 3 very wealthy, good-looking guys from the Miami Beach area where I am currently. And now I believe it is way over 60 accusers who have come forward to say, sort of in a Diddy-esque fashion, they were drugging these women, and it's gone on for a couple of decades. And the COE and I happen to know people that know people in this area, very small relatively. And we're going to be doing that again tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Professor, I don't know if this is more of a Tim, but I'm going to give you a shot at this one. Can Katie, Professor Patuto, make a deal to testify against Donna in exchange for some sort of early release? I know she got LWOP. She's the one that had immunity, could have walked away and didn't. What kind of leverage, if anything, does she have at this point?
I don't think she has much because she's given so many different stories, and particularly under oath. She can try again. She tried for a deal, I believe, when she testified against Charlie, and they wouldn't give her a deal then. And she testified on the what do they call it? Let me say on the hope that there would be something that they would do for her afterwards. I don't see that there's any reason now why they would do it. She's got the same incentive to keep trying that she did before Charlie's trial. So I don't see why they would do anything now to make it sweeter. And she's going to be the same tainted witness that she was the last time. So she can try, but I can't imagine. I don't see any reason why they would do it.
So Joel, if they were going to give her a deal, they weren't going to reduce her sentence before Donna's case because it would really make her worthless. Yeah. So they've got the bait out there. The hook is out there, right? And they're letting her feed on it with the prospect of maybe after all the cases are done, they might file something with the court to reduce her sentence.
Can you imagine how she feels knowing, though, that if she had just cooperated from the get-go, she wouldn't even be charged? She would just be free? I mean, that has to be playing in her mind every night when she goes to sleep.
That's a lawyer's that's some lawyer's worst nightmare, right? Yeah. You did bad client control, or you gave bad advice, and the client gets life, knowing they could have significantly done better if they would have cooperated from the beginning. Now, sometimes the client just says, I'm not doing it, but if the lawyer misled them or made them believe they had a chance at winning when they didn't, and there was this great little, golden ticket, you would feel bad as a lawyer if you see what happened.
Yeah, but this is not the only. I mean, I keep wondering what Daniel Rashbaum told Donna. She said she talked to him and he said, you might not. I wonder whether he said to her, if they catch you trying to get away, here are the other consequences that are coming. I mean, I just think this case is replete with places where I know it's 20/20 hindsight, and on the front end you don't always get everything, but it seems to me it's replete with places where you could point and say, and Gigi and Tim, it seems to me the one you pick is the most glaring example.
Shout out to Annalie for the super sticker here. Abby Crossing, friend of ours, friend of the show. Katie's lawyers did her wrong. Ned Smith always with the funny comments. Earwax control. Megan Connor, who was on with the COE. Shout out to Megan. Very smart, bright mind. I always learn a lot of stuff from Megan. Gigi, I know you got to go, and I'm going to stick you with a question that everyone wants the answer to. Are they going to go after Wendi Adelson? Yes or no? Whatever you say will be what happens. No pressure.
I think so.
You do?
No, I don't know. I mean, I just, it's one of those, Joel, I go back and forth. Are they just waiting for her to finish testifying against everybody before they go after her? Are they giving her enough rope on the stand to see if they can, get her for lying? I don't know. I mean, I've heard that they watch her very closely. I just don't know. I mean, Wendy's a lawyer. I think out of everybody, she's played it smart by not talking to them on the phone, not talking to Charlie in jail. I think, Wendi, maybe if anything benefits her, it's the fact that she probably knew putting anything in a text message is a really, really bad idea. And when they started doing the bump, we didn't hear any calls of Wendi. So I don't know. I just, look, one big thing for me, and I think it is for a lot of people, the minute she finds out Dan Markel's been shot and killed, any mother would say, where are my kids? Are my kids okay? They were with their dad. That always to me was like, no question. And nobody else really knew that schedule of when the boys would be at school versus when Dan may be coming home. So, I hope so. If they have that on her, I'm curious, like everybody else, are we going to be a day or two past verdict for Donna, and then we get that same alert where everybody's scrambling to go live because there's breaking news that another Adelson's been arrested. Color me intrigued. I'm here for it. I'll have every alert on my phone. So we'll wait and see. But I think if they're going to do it, it's going to be soon. After Donna, you have Wendi and Harvey. Those are the last two really main players in all this. And my way of thinking is if it's not super soon after verdict, maybe it's just not going to be, which, everybody has their opinions about whether or not she should be arrested. And, I just expressed mine. But all right, I'm going to go talk to my Patreon people. Thank you guys for having me on. Good to see you guys. I'm so jealous you're just hanging out in Italy.
Bye,
It should be.
But Gigi, the show is Pretty Lies and Alibis. Pretty Lies and Alibis. Check it out. This is Harvey. She just mentioned Harvey, so I wanted to bring that up there. This is the craziest case. It's definitely among them. That is for sure. There is, we're going to get to, Tim will break down what are they going to depose Sigfredo about in a moment, but there's now an unredacted version, and it's interesting because I hadn't listened to this in a really long time. Jeff Lacasse, who was Wendy's boyfriend at the time, and he was talking about basically the fact that it almost appeared like Wendi was trying to pin this case on him. And I feel his testimony could really implicate her. But I'm going to play, and this is courtesy, I believe, of True Crime Metrics. True Crime Metrics, shout out to them. But this is a clip, unredacted, of Jeff Lacasse. Let's play it out here.
And one of the strange things that happened was we had a trip to California scheduled to see my parents the week that Danny was killed. And in early June, she rescheduled that trip. And I said, what's the problem with the trip? She says, well, I'm worried we'll get stuck in the airport and we won't be back on Friday. I have to pick up the kids from school. And I said, but we're coming back Thursday night. It's not winter. We're not going. Winter in the winter, I would understand. There's no way we're going to get stuck. We can rent a car. We have friends that could babysit. This is strange. I said, fine, cancel the trip.
And that was going to be in early June?
The trip was going to be the week that Danny was killed.
Oh, okay. That was the trip?
11th to 19th was supposed to be the trip. So we had a trip planned, and she was real strange about the fact that we had to reschedule this trip. It just didn't make sense. And I even said, if you just don't want to go because you don't feel comfortable right now, just tell me, that's cool. She goes, no, I have to pick up the kids from school that day. I just have to. I don't want to do anything to stop that. And she said, I'll miss the kids at that point. I said, okay. A couple of days later, I say, well, she said, but I want to spend that time with you. I was leaving for Tennessee on Friday. And she said, I want to spend that Monday through Thursday with you. I said, great. You want to go to St. Augustine? She loves the beach. She hates Tallahassee. This, again, is just very strange and suspicious to me. Wendi Adelson tells me, what I want to do is a staycation. I want to stay home in Tallahassee. I said, you want to stay in Tallahassee the hottest week of the year? He goes, yeah, we'll go to Tom Brown Park, we'll do this. I said, you hate it here. I'm offering to take you away. Why wouldn't you? It's just really strange at the time. I remember saying to my friends, like, Wendi wants, people laughed. I said, Wendi says she wants to stay in Tallahassee. Like, she leaves town. Sure, every chance she gets, she leaves town. Why would she want to stay? I said, I don't know. I have no idea. I finally managed to convince her to do a trip to St. Augustine, but we had to schedule it so that we were back basically by the time of the shooting. So that was just strange. It was peculiar at the time. And when we scheduled that trip to St. Augustine, I was sitting her, she has her calendar open. You have to schedule everything with her. That's just how she was. There was just, at the time, I can remember sitting in her office trying to schedule this, and there's this weirdness about that weekend. We're scheduling other things, no problem. But that weekend, she just was intent on. That day meant something to me before Danny was shot. Like, there's something weird about that week. I don't know what it is, but there's something weird about that week.
Tim Jansen, this is a guy who, to me, is extremely credible and you hear him talking about how Wendi had to be in Tallahassee on July 18th, the day that Dan Markel is shot, almost like she had to make sure a job was done. Almost like she had to make sure a job was done. And if you recall, Tim, which I know you do, she drives by the scene, which is completely out of the way from where she lives. How important is Jeff Lacasse in all this if it comes to indicting Wendi?
I think Jeff is very credible. I think he comes across as someone that's trying to relate information that might be helpful to an investigation. I think he's trying to remember everything in his mind, and he remembers something was off. She loved the beach, hated Tallahassee, but for some reason she had to be in Tallahassee that week. That is very important to investigators. Coincidences don't happen when you have a murder of a spouse. And then you add in her actions of driving by the crime scene. So yeah, that's important. And I think I think there was evidence somehow she was trying to pinpoint when he was leaving, and he left early. And so she made some comments, and the investigators had to verify he went to Tennessee to prove he couldn't have been the suspect. So yeah, he could be a real problem for if Wendi ever gets charged.
Yeah, and I think there's no love lost between the two of them. By the way, Ned Smith said she would date Jeff Lacasse. So Jeff, if you're watching, email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail. Just a warning, she's got a big bun with a sewing needle or knitting needle. I always screw that. Shout out to Guido Casero here with the $5 super chat.
Is this
Tim,
a dating app now?
Yes, it is. It doesn't. This does not say Joel. It says shout out to Tim. It says Jim, but it's supposed to be Tim Jansen, the best guest ever, from Michelle Gamble.
Thank you, Michelle.
It is Tim, Jim, whatever you want to call him. He'll take the compliment. Joe Patuto, you just listened to that. Jeff Lacasse, he's kind of like your everyman. I think he was teaching or social worker. I think maybe teaching social work, something along those lines, and here he is saying that before Dan ever got shot, that it was so peculiar to him, her reaction to that particular time frame, that she had to be in Tallahassee on July 18th. What do you make of that?
Same thing Tim did. I think he's very credible. He remembers what he remembers, and when you listen to him, he's really believable about it. The one concern I have about his testimony, he's testified twice now? Twice?
Is it? I think it's
whatever. And you start sounding a little canned. In that interview, he sounded, of course, it was at the time, he sounded really believable. For some people, it's harder to sound that way the second or third or the fourth time that you're giving the same story. But I thought, I can't imagine anybody thinking he was making that up. I mean, it just rang really true. And, and match that against the way Donna sounded on the stand the other day. It's almost night and day in terms of who sounds believable, independent of the content of what they're saying.
Yeah. Megsy Boo, thank you for this. Where can I find info on this phone call? We've done shows on it. You'd have to look through our videos, and I'm sure other people have. And I just got a sub got gifted for me. I think that's what it is. So welcome. Great. I love seeing the new names. So hello, everybody. Welcome. Got see behind me, best guest, but a better community right next to my other ear right there. Tim, I was thinking about this when you and I were taping the Nancy Grace show, because she plays the 911 call from Mr. Geiger, the elderly neighbor. If it wasn't for him, Tim, would this case ever have been solved? I mean, do you think?
Well, I think that Prius was the biggest clue, because if they didn't know what kind of car it was and they weren't looking for the Prius, would they have singled that out at the gym? And would they have noticed the rear view mirror? They might have, but he certainly gave them a big clue early on that allowed them to follow it.
Yeah. So we have another clip from Jeff Lacasse. And again, I haven't listened to these in a long time. This is like a 2.5 hour police interview. And I just had an idea. You know what we should do, COE, this Friday with Scott and Phil. I don't know why I never thought of this. Phil Waters has investigated over 400 homicides, and Scott Duffy is a retired FBI. We should play the Wendi Adelson police interviews and have them break it down. I think that's what we're going to do. Just
Good idea.
decided that right now. Yeah.
Mhm.
But here's a second clip of Jeff Lacasse. I think he's speaking to Detective Isom here, Craig Isom. Here we go. Clip number 2. Yeah. And again, shout out to True Crime Metrics. They got the unredacted version.
Now,
It-
Craig's
it
an
was the week that
experienced
Danny was
investigator.
shot, yeah.
Okay, what date? What date are we talking about when she's? Okay,
Yeah.
so when is she saying I can't do it? What date? What date are we talking about when she's telling you I can't?
Early
do it?
June. I can pull up the exact
Early
date.
June.
Early June. Yeah.
So you're supposed to go to California with her, just you two.
We have plane tickets purchased. And she sat me down. I think it was June 5th or 7th. I will find out for you if you would like.
Yeah.
And she just said, I can't do that, and it just didn't make sense. It just didn't make any sense.
So she'd already said that date was that window of
She said, this is the 1 week I have to go see your parents. And I
11th
said,
through the 19th.
but that was in May we booked them. Then we have the flight. I find out about Danielle Sack. And afterwards she says, I feel comfortable with that. She just had an appointment with her therapist, and she said, my main concern is I want to be able to see the kids on that day, the day that Danny was shot. We had people volunteering to babysit if they needed to, if we were delayed. We weren't going to be delayed. And she insisted it was not because she didn't want to go with me. She wanted to spend that week with me. She just wanted to spend that week with me in Tallahassee. She did not want to leave Tallahassee that week.
And Vesper Martini, always insightful, and she notes that this is 10 years ago tomorrow. Tomorrow is March 6th. This is March 6th of 2015. It's crazy how much time has passed. Again, you have to think of, Ruth and Phil, Dan's parents, and Shelly, that they've been just going through this for years on end. Again, Joe, what, if anything, stood out to you in this clip? Basically saying sort of the same thing here, that she was adamant about being around for the day that Dan Markel's life is taken.
Yeah, same thing. He sounds very credible. He sounds perplexed about it. You don't hear him sounding as though he's accusing her of anything. I mean, he's not saying, gee, here it is, and this is why I think she's guilty. I mean, I just think he's very, very, I don't want to say matter of fact because it's a murder, but he sounds genuine and very, let me tell you what I know. Let me tell you what I was thinking. Let me give you my sense of what was going on. And I think it comes across extremely well.
Yeah.
And it's hard for him. He's the sort of the scorned lover. He was this, guy who was just, enamored of this woman, and he has to get on the stand. I think he said it on one of the testimonies, and, bare his soul that he was, I think he decided that she, and probably correctly, that she was playing him. And, it's got to be really hard for him. And I think a jury will respond to that too.
Yeah. On this, by the way, and again, True Crime Metrics has the whole unredacted version. You see here is probably a little TMI, but on this unredacted tape, Jeff says he had to get a full STD panel after finding out Wendi was sleeping around, and he talks about her personality. And it's interesting. He said basically that she was completely into herself and an absolute mess with everything. So that's not too shocking there. But again, Tim, it's weird because he even looks a bit like Dan. Like he physically resembles Dan. And, I'm wondering if that was deliberate because she wanted to have, I don't know, that connection where she could say this guy was jealous of him if she was trying to set him up. Do you think there's anything there?
Well, if she was trying to not get an emotional attachment and she was trying to find someone to use as a patsy, she's probably looking for someone that, probably doesn't have a lot of experience dating, a professor type that she could manipulate. I will tell you, though, in Tallahassee, in the summertime, you want to get out of Tallahassee. It's the worst place in the world. July and August are absolutely horrendous. And if you can get to the beach where the wind, you're going to go. But Tallahassee, it's just awful. We sit in a valley, and the heat and the humidity is just awful. So if she had a vacation and didn't want to go, and she normally likes to go into the beach, that's something that stands out.
Since I'm already being yelled at for talking during my show, I will now really get yelled at because this true crime stuff sometimes gets me down. I got to be honest, and it's it's difficult. But anyway, I have written a book, and it's about my mother, who is a Holocaust survivor, my part-time co-host. And when you read that book, you will laugh because it is sort of funny, not because of me, but I guess in spite of me. And it will change how you see life. And it is available on the Amazon. Check it out. I just want to share my mom's story. It is incredible. She was saved by a Catholic nun in a boys' school. She survived the loss of a child. She's just survived the loss of her husband, my father, of 63 years. And we still argue about who was tougher on, me or her, losing a husband or losing Tim, what do you think? You think it's harder to lose a father or a husband, Tim? You'll be the arbiter of this.
I can tell you I lost my father at 9. And it's tough. That's a tough situation. I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah. Did he die of natural causes? Not to bring this up, but
he died of lung cancer.
Oh wow. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
man. That's tough. Very tough. Anyway, now that I brought down the whole chat, it is good that Space Coast is bringing. There's going to be a giveaway. Space Coast is the unheralded hero of STS. He handles all the tech stuff on the West Coast. And shout out to Steve Cohen booking all the best guests. The COE, she's the backbone. She's the glue that holds us together. And the mighty mods could not do it without the mighty mods. So a couple more things to cover, and then we'll get final thoughts and say goodbye. But I'm going to pull this up here. So we found out in the last day or two that Sigfredo Garcia, he's going to be deposed in 5 days on March 10th. Tim Jansen, walk us through this process. Why is he being deposed? He's being deposed by the defense. They have to go to his correctional institution. What's that process like for them, and what are they going to try to get from him?
Well, the problem they have is he can tell them to pound sand. And what they're trying to do is get some evidence to undermine Katie. They've got to undermine Katie because they know Katie's going to come in and hurt Donna. And they're probably figuring Sigfredo is the one that can do it. But
Tim, let me ask you, why would he wouldn't want to do that, right? I mean, this is a woman, for those who don't know, Katie Magbanua. She has children with Sigfredo Garcia, and she's sort of the middle woman because she was dating Charlie. So she has kids with the man above her, Sigfredo, and a relationship with Charlie Adelson. I mean, Tim, do you see a scenario where Sigfredo throws her under the bus?
I can only think that the state has somewhat put Sigfredo on the witness list, then they are entitled to depose him. But the defense can't grant him immunity. I don't think all of his appeals have been wasted. So when they come there, he can say, pound sand. I'm not talking to you. I'm my Fifth Amendment, and there's nothing they can do. And I don't think the judge can do anything.
Right.
Carol Burgess here with a comment back to Jeff. He was interviewed by police and came back a couple of days later with tons of notes he had written, and I'm sure he has those notes, and I'm sure the state has looked at them, and they could be really incriminating. So, Joe Patuto, just your take on this. This is sort of SOP, I guess, in the law, in the legal world, I should say, but they are the defense. It's a new defense team now, and they are going to speak to Sigfredo. I guess my question to you, to put you on the spot, what would be the most important question you would have for him if you're the defense?
To help Donna?
Yeah.
I guess not. Well, I suppose I'd want him to admit that it was all Wendy's idea. All Katie's idea, Katie and Charlie, and that he has information that Donna wasn't involved. But I can't imagine him saying that.
Well, how about this? You just gave, by kind of putting a Freudian slip out there. What if Sigfredo says, I have kids with Katie. Katie told me everything, and Katie told me it was really Wendi and not Donna. What if he goes that route?
He could, but why? I mean, why would he help Donna? It's
Why would he hurt
Katie's
Katie?
mother of his children, and he's been silent for how many years? 10 years, 12 years, and now he's going to come forward and help Donna. There's nothing impossible in this world, but I think this would come close. This would really surprise me no end. In fact, I would think it would be more likely with her trying to involve Katie that he would come forward and say, now I'm going to tell you what I really know about the rest of the family. And here's the note I had. Remember, Luis Garcia talks about the note that he was reading, so he knew where he was going to hear. I still have the note, or I can tell you what it said. And she was involved. That seems to be much more likely.
Yeah. Thank you, Molly. All these new names, I love it. Saying STS or go-to channel. Tim, I got to understand this a little better. This is a guy who literally is spending the rest of his life in prison. Out of anybody, he's the one that's definitely not getting out. He's basically a gangster, even though Luis Rivera is the true Latin king. But Sigfredo grew up in a rough neighborhood and rolled with the gangsters. And you walk in there as Donna's attorney, like, Tim, how do you start that converse? And you're a likable guy, Tim. Like, I don't know that he's going to love Jackie Fulford or Josh Zellman. So if you're Josh Zellman, like, what's your opening line? Like, hey, man, what's up, Sig? How's it been going? Like, how do you approach him on this?
Well, one, he's not going to testify against the mother of his children. Two, he doesn't want the word in the jail he's out that he's a snitch, and he's not testifying or helping anybody. I don't see, it makes me think they're getting paid by the hour, because I think this is a trip that's going to be nothing but a waste of money. Now, maybe they know something. Maybe his lawyer said he wants to talk. Maybe Sigfredo does want to talk. Maybe he realizes I'm in there for life and I want to tell you what really happened. Maybe that could be a possibility. We don't know. But unless that happens, I don't know.
Some comments rolling in. Condolences to Tim here. And look at this down under die. By the way, it's blown my mind how many new names I'm seeing. So thank you. Molly was one of them. Down under die. I haven't seen your name. I think I've seen it before, maybe once or twice. But we are an open and welcoming community. So come on in, and we advocate for victims' rights here. So 2 other quick points. Going back to our playbook here. These are the characters in this story. Katie Magbanua. Oh, we just lost Joe, who's in Italy. That's okay, but we've got Tim. Tim, to you, with Joe not here now, Katie Magbanua, she is, there are 2 basically transport orders filed. One is for
Right.
Katie, one is for Charlie. So
Right.
Katie's going to be there. What does a transport order tell us?
It tells you that the state has subpoenaed them, or the defense got the judge to subpoena them. I believe it's the state subpoenaing them because I talked to Charlie's lawyers, and that's a transport for the trial. And that's not for a depot beforehand, but it's a transport for the trial. Walking in and talking to Sigfredo, really. I mean, I've tried to get people to be witnesses. I usually send Monica in, because she's prettier than me and she can talk to anybody. But when a lawyer walks in there to look at you like they want to punch you, and you're like, unless you're going to get them out or give them canteen or something, they don't really want to be in that office area talking to you.
Look at this. I haven't had a soda since December 22nd, and I just had a Coke Zero. No real sugar. It's still poison, but I like the name Diet Coke Addict. I can't believe I made it to a live welcome. The first time I'm hearing that name, because I would have remembered it. So welcome, and I hope you come back here. Tim, finally, this is sort of like the $64,000 question and the mystery here. Like Charlie, Wendi, Donna. So Charlie is also on the transport list. It's a little tougher for him. He's coming from South Dakota. Probably going to take him 1,000 days. He probably has to leave tomorrow to get here on time for June. I'm telling you, I think that Charlie and Donna's kind of bitterness towards Wendi is bubbling up. But what do you expect from Charlie this go around? He also,
I think Charlie's going to be subpoenaed for rebuttal. I think that Georgia want to have him there in case Donna changes the story of this so-called conspiracy, and maybe call him with immunity, limited immunity, to undercut her story. That's what I'm guessing. I don't have any inside information on that.
Yeah. I'm just starting to think, and now we're coming full circle, Tim, because I like to make you laugh at the end of the show, which is the
Okay.
Wendi question.
Here we
I
go.
just,
Here
yeah,
we
I
go.
just, Charlie St. Don in court will be the last time they ever see each other. That's kind of sad in a crazy way.
Yeah.
It's it's just a tragic. I mean, when you really just step back, that Donna wanted her kids out of Tallahassee. Now she's stuck in jail.
Mhm.
Her son is stuck in prison the rest of his life. And it's just a tragedy all the way. Like, why are
It is.
people so dumb? But I digress. But Tim, I don't know, man. I think that Charlie is probably really disgusted with his sister. And I think the mother is at this point too. I'm not going to be surprised if they're able to cut some kind of deal on Wendy's, at Wendy's peril. So, I mean, do you think I'm just crazy with that?
I don't think any deal will be cut until his appeal is finalized. Okay. He's got an appeal, and then he's got the ineffective counsel, which may have merit. He might get a new trial. If that doesn't work and he loses everything, then does his lawyer contact George and say, hey, we want a deal. Now, then he could go against Wendi. I don't know. But then he'd probably have to have some credible independent evidence to prove, because, he's really worthless as a witness. If he's testifying, was convicted, claiming innocence, and now he's going to say I was guilty, not only me, but my sister. And that's a long stretch.
Yeah. This comment was up. I read it. Megsy Boo is here. And then we've got this one, Dina Kev, super sticker. Thank you so much. These go a long way. Appreciate it. And then Tim, I lied. A final question and your final thoughts. I hope that her oldest son, Rob Adelson, testifies. The irony here that Donna is stuck in Tallahassee and is complaining of small ear canals, and her son is an ear, nose, and throat doctor who she's estranged from. What are the chances, Tim, that we see and hear from, and the winner is on the giveaway, but what are the chances? Ida Shaw, look at this. Ida Shaw JD. Go, Ida. What does she get, by the way? I have no idea, but Space Coast, let us know what she gets. She gets an evening out with Space Coast in Los Angeles. What could be better? What are the chances, Tim Jansen, Keith Morrison pillow? There you go. That's even, is it really a Keith Morrison pillow?
I thought you were sitting on it.
I am sitting on one, but I guess they're going to get another one. We got to get Keith Morrison on this show. I'm going to get him.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'm going to get him on. I know his producer, and I'm going to try to work on that. And the other day I had Robert Rand on, who's been covering the Menendez brothers story since 1989, and he's going to work on getting us Lyle and Eric. We'll see if any of that pans out. But Tim, what are the chances we see Rob Adelson, and your final thoughts here tonight?
I think Rob will testify. I think he cannot give an opinion, but the judge told them and warned the defense, you could open the door. And I think his testimony could rebut some testimony. If you're going to come in here and say that this mother doesn't know anything and she would never, she's gullible and naive, I think the judge has opened the door that he can be, rebuttal can come in. And I will say, I've done a lot in my life, but I will tell you, being the father of the bride, it is a whole different feeling. We are on cloud nine. I'm so excited for having a son in the family, and so excited for my daughter. And I just can't wait.
As they say in the Jewish religion, Tim, Mazel Tov. And Christy Allison here. Thank you so much. His name is Austin, and he's marrying Tim's daughter, Janie. And for those who do not know, Tim puts on probably the biggest Christmas party in America. And look, there you go.
There, look
There
at
you
that.
go. Yeah,
And
look at that.
Windsor made it.
Yeah, look at Windsor's in there, and you're looking at the beautiful Janie, who looks a lot like Annie. I'll be honest, Tim, I have a little hard time telling them apart. But
And
you
that
see
is
a
that is
proud
that is
father.
not me telling my daughter what the budget is.
Take it from me, Tim. Don't spend too much on a wedding. It's yeah, you have a good time. You
Thank
know,
you.
you,
That's
you
wonderful.
do.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. But for those who beautiful family, I agree. And there's Austin in the middle. Austin looks like a good dude. And then on the
He is.
right, and do you know Austin's parents?
His father was here. His brother was here. My sister flew in from Pittsburgh, and we had this whole. And I had a photographer hiding in the bushes, and we knew he was going to ask her on our dock. So it was fabulous. And then my best friend that owns an Italian restaurant came in and made a nice Italian meal for everybody. It was wonderful.
That's awesome. And look at this, Best Nancy with good advice. No budget for your baby girl, Tim. No budget. So there you go. You're not retiring quite yet, I guess. So
No,
Tim
not
needs a big
after
cake.
not after this expense is coming in.
So anyway, we appreciate all of you. We appreciate Tim Jansen, Joe Patuto, Gigi McKelvey, A Pretty Lies and Alibis. Tomorrow we're going to my friend Wesley John Holmes, an Aussie living in Tokyo, and appreciate all of you. We will see you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. We're doing the Alexander brothers. It's another crazy story, and we'll bring you the latest on that. And then you know what? Friday, 12:30 p.m., we're going to have America's most respected detective, Phil Waters, breaking down the Wendi Adelson police interview. That guy, there's no one like Phil. He teaches literally all over the world. He hates calling it interrogations, but that's what he teaches. He calls them interviews because it's very a human relationship, as he puts it. But he will be here, and he'll break down Wendy's police interview during our show, 12:30 p.m. And huge congrats to the soon-to-be bride. And America.
My wife wants me to say she is also so excited. It's a family affair, not just me. Mother of the bride,
100%.
And her sister is the maid of honor.
Steph, we love you, and we should have her.
Steph is fabulous, and it's going to be a beautiful wedding.
Yeah, and there is Tim's beautiful wife in the green dress next to him, and Windsor. We will see you guys tomorrow. By the way, love you, America. Love you, Tallahassee. Justice for Dan Markel. These were some of the countries that were in the chat today. Cambodia, Qatar, and I think I redeemed myself. People say it is in fact Qatar. Lesotho, Africa, Nigeria in Africa, Spain, and as always, the Republic of Ireland, but also Melbourne, Australia, and other places in Australia, Adelaide, you name it. They were here. Love you. See you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night.